Hello, welcome to class number 3 of Basics of Knitting with Robin. Class number 1 was talking about materials. Class number 2 was talking about a slip knot and cast-ons. And today we're going to talk about and demonstrate the knitting stitch. I have 20 stitches on my needle and I will be knitting across here in a minute. If you have had any trouble or have any questions, feel free to email me, robin@robintalbert.com. I will answer any and all questions or suggestions, anything that you want to share with me. I might be sharing them on the videos in the future, so be careful what you say. It's a gloomy day in Texas, and the world is seeming a little bumpy. So it might be a good day to pick up your knitting needles and give it a try. So I'm just going to go for it. Watch closely. When you have all your stitches on your knitting needle, right here at the bottom where the tail is, you'll see a little spot where they cross. That is where the right hand needle is going to be going in the stitch. Wrap it around, through and off. The right hand needle, let me scoot those down just a little bit, move over a little bit so I'm centered better. The right hand needle is going to go in where it's joined. Slip it down, around, and off. It's right in here. The first row of knitting on any project to me is the hardest. To do the knitting stitch off of the cast on row. I'm doing it in human slow motion so you can see it better. Around, down, and then off. Around, off. I'm going to do all 20 stitches. Can you see where I'm putting my needle? My yarn goes around. This is the knitting stitch. We'll talk about stitching different techniques and different stitches later, but this is the knitting stitch. Down, around, and off. This is the first thing I learned when I knit. And I used to knit things called a nothing. I think it was just a way for an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old little girl to practice her stitches because I loved it so much. Okay, I have one more stitch on my left needle. That's what the slip knot is right there. So I'm knitting the slip knot and off. Here is my first row of knitting, and it will look like this. I'm going to knit the second row because I want you to see how that looks also. And as a beginner, one of my favorite little things to remind the students about, every time you finish a row, count your stitches. You know how many stitches you're supposed to have on your needle. And when I was a beginner, I would drop stitches a lot, and that's probably why I suggest to count, because if you have only 18 stitches, you're supposed to have 20, you have to rip it out. Well, that's my technique. I like it to be as perfect as I can make it. And when you rip out anything on a knitting project, it's called frogging it. I don't know where the term came from, but it's called frogging a project. In fact, 2 years ago, I bought yarn in France and I started a sweater and I have the back almost completely done. And I'm going to frog it today because I saw a pattern I liked better for this wonderful yarn. Maybe I'll show it to you in a week or two. But right now, let's talk about this and let's hope for no frogging, okay? I'm going to knit my second row on the 20 stitches of this new project. I slip. Remember, don't knit this tail. Don't knit that tail because it will just fall apart on you. Take your needle. There's your stitch. Wrap it around. This row will be easier. Well, it's easier for me. And I think it will be easier for you too. It goes right in there. I hope you can see that little spot where the needle goes in. Pull it around and then off. Around, off. When you knit every row, that's called the garter stitch. When you knit a row and purl a row, that is the stockinette stitch. We're going to learn to purl in a couple of weeks, but right now, let's get the knitting down, and then we'll talk about purling. I hopefully in the videos to come to maybe get a easy project going, a scarf or something like that. I'd like to get to a point where I do a sweater on the video. I don't know what anyone who's watching has in mind, but I'd love to have your suggestions and comments. Mean a lot. My yarn's a little tangled up here. Excuse me. There we go. Okay, just a few more stitches on the second row. Right here. Yarn around, off, around, and off. Last stitch, done. I have 2 rows, 20 stitches on this project. And this is how it looks. I hope you can see it. When you knit every row, it looks the same on the front as it does on the back. And your main thing right now is to learn to put your needle in right where it's supposed to go. Throw your yarn around the needle and then take that stitch off of the left-hand needle. I've enjoyed showing you this stitch today. If you have any questions, let me know. Next class, we will continue knitting. Send me questions. We'll answer them on the video if you have any. If not, we will continue to knit and talk about patterns and maybe start the purl stitch. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time.